Ted Bundy?
I've never spoken to anybody about this. I am looking for an opportunity to tell the story as best I can.
The name Ted Bundy is synonymous with terror and violence. A cunning and charming psychopath who kidnapped, raped, and murdered more than 30 young women in the 1970s in 7 states. He remains one of the most infamous serial killers in American history.
Approximately one girl a month. In fact, later on, the police would produce what they called the Girl of the Month Club, as they traced the girls who disappeared and then were later found dead.
Millions of people are still fascinated by Bundy 30 years after his death by execution. But there is one person who Bundy never harmed, his longtime girlfriend, Elizabeth Kloepfer. When asked about Bundy in an interview, Elizabeth stated, "Ted was a charmer. He could talk to anyone, but he also had a dark side."
That Ted Bundy was a gentleman?
Oh, completely. Put a lot of energy into making us happy, doing fun things. My parents loved him. He was just really it, in my opinion. And I really wanted to marry him.
He would become very moody and distant, and then suddenly he would be back to his old self, laughing and joking. For years, Elizabeth Kloepfer was in a relationship with Ted Bundy, never suspecting that he was a killer. So why did he spare her? To answer this, we need to examine Bundy's motivations for committing his heinous acts.
Did you think he was capable of murder?
No.
Ted Bundy was a complex individual with multiple personality disorders. He was a master at manipulation, with a lack of interpersonal empathy mixed with unemotional demeanor, and had a need for control over women. His victims were often young, attractive, and vulnerable, and he saw them as objects to be used for his own twisted pleasures. Bundy was also driven by a need for power and dominance. He kept souvenirs from his crimes, and when asked why he took Polaroid photos of his victims, he said, "When you work hard to do something right, you don't want to forget it." Another example of Bundy's weird behavior is that he would give a piece of jewelry to a woman in his life and claim he found it on the street, when in fact it was owned by a victim he had just raped and killed. The act of seeing the women wearing the jewelry became a part of his secret psychotic game, fueled his fantasies, and he found pleasure in thinking about the gruesome acts he committed to obtain it. Ted Bundy was a smart psychopath. He knew how to blend in and how to avoid getting caught. He was very cunning and knew how to manipulate people, including the police. So why did he never harm Elizabeth Kloepfer? One theory is that she represented a sense of normalcy and stability in his life. She was someone who knew him intimately and saw through his facade, but she also provided a sense of security and comfort. Ted Bundy was a man with 2 very different sides to his personality. On one hand, he was a charming and intelligent individual, but on the other, he was a sadistic killer.
Police say he was armed with a heavy oak log. He clubbed and then strangled to death 20-year-old Lisa Levy and 21-year-old Margaret Bowman. At least one of them was raped.
Elizabeth Kloepfer was the only person who knew both sides of him and still accepted him for who he was. Another theory is that Elizabeth Kloepfer held a level of power and control over Bundy. She was the one person who could bring him back to reality and keep him grounded. By sparing her, he was ensuring that he still had a part of his normal life intact. Ted Bundy was a man who thrived on control and power. He needed to feel like he was in charge of every aspect of his life, and Elizabeth Kloepfer was the one person who challenged that control. By not harming her, he was preserving his sense of power and control over her. So why did Ted Bundy never kill his girlfriend? The answer is not clear and may never be fully understood. But one thing is for sure, Elizabeth Kloepfer was the one person who knew Ted Bundy better than anyone else, and her presence in his life was a constant reminder of the person he wanted to be, or perhaps a reminder of the normal life he could never have. Elizabeth also stated that Ted was a complicated man, and I'm still trying to make sense of it all, but I do know one thing: he never hurt me, and for that, I will always be grateful. Ted Bundy's crimes will always be remembered as a dark chapter in American history, but the fact that he never harmed Elizabeth Kloepfer remains a mystery that continues to captivate people to this day. Thank you for watching. This was our take into the mind of Ted Bundy and the reasons why he never killed his girlfriend. Stay tuned for more videos on some of the most intriguing and mysterious crimes in history.